Good afternoon. Welcome to the January 20th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum present today. So our first item of business is going to be to approve the minutes of the January 6th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
And Ms. Jones, we have Mr. LaLance by Zoom today, so
okay. I didn't
all
know that.
roll call votes will be, or all votes will need to be by roll call.
Okay, so I guess still per the governor's orders, we will be allowing electronic participation in our meetings. So Mr. LaLance, our newest member of the Planning Commission, joining us by Zoom today. Okay. Welcome, Mr. LaLance.
Hey.
Hey. All right, so again, we just need to approve the minutes from January 6, 2021. If everybody had a chance to review those, were there any additions or corrections, changes to those minutes? And if not, we just need a motion.
I'll move that we approve the January 6 minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco.
Chair Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Halliburton.
Aye.
Commissioner Silas.
Aye.
Commissioner Russell.
Aye.
Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance.
Abstain.
He abstained, yeah. Okay. All right. Minutes pass. Next, we have our consent agenda. Looks like 6 items on there today. We have the Maples Section 6 preliminary plat for 50 lots on 19.7 acres, zoned RS8, RS10, and RS12, located along Maple Farms Drive and Runyon Cove. Maples Family General Partnership is the developer. Miller Road realignment, re-subdivision of Lot 1, final plat for 2 lots on 4.0 acres, served as an outside the city sewer customer, located along Miller Road and Epps Mill Road. Kalpana Patel is the developer. Item C is Evergreen Farms, Section 37, Phase 2, final plat for 59 lots on 10.4 acres, zoned PRD, located along Secretariat Trace. Evergreen Farms Development, Inc. is the developer. Item D is Stover's Glen, Section 3, final plat for 32 lots on 16.9 acres, zoned RS10 and RSA Type 1, located along Stover's Glen and Licinius Lane. Charles Waldron, developer. Item E is the crossings of 3 rivers, re-subdivision of lots 11, 13, and 14. Final plat for 6 lots on 0.5 acres, zoned PRD, located along Hospitality Lane. 3 Rivers Rutherford LLC is the developer. And item F is the mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of an existing sanitary sewer easement located on property along the south side of Middle Tennessee Boulevard. SEC Inc. is the applicant. Did we have any members of the Planning Commission or the staff that would like to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? And if not, we're ready for a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton.
Aye.
Commissioner Russell.
Aye.
Commissioner Silas.
Aye.
Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance.
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Next, we have our Gateway Design Overlay. We have 2 items today there. The first item is Robert Rose Village East, Lot 5, final design and site plan review of a 14,005 square foot commercial center on 2.4 acres, zoned MU and GDO 1, located along Robert Rose Drive and Lothric Way. Fadu Lee, developer, close enough, and Ms. Green. How are you today?
Very good, thank you. Good afternoon, Planning Commission members. Our first item under the gateway portion of our agenda this afternoon is for you to consider final design review and site plan approval for Lot 5 of the Robert Rose Village East Master Plan Development. This development consists of several different types of developed and undeveloped parcels. It includes the Krispy Kreme, self-storage, apartments, a racetrack gas station, and a commercial center. This Lot 5 is proposed to be a commercial center, which is a multi-tenant structure. Some people call them small strip retail center, so that is their proposed use. And the plans provided to us, both at initial and final design review, demonstrate compliance with our minimum standards. It meets the gateway standards, parking, design. I've laid the material board out on the table in front of me, and I can pass it around if you have some additional questions, but you did consider this item under initial design review last month, and I think it was relatively well received. You didn't give a lot of feedback regarding the building that was proposed. I think it was considered to be in line with our standards. It does completely screen rooftop units. It is a brick building, and that's the primary material. And the architect has been able to add some variations in the roof line and the wall planes to add some interest in those elements as well. Just for information, because you might be interested in knowing, the primary tenant for this building will be a beauty salon, actually a nail salon specifically, and it'll be a rather large one. So I know that often as Planning Commission members, you're our faces in our community and people would like to know what's being constructed. So if you see that in the future, I just wanted to give you that information. We do have the civil engineer here as well. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, staff recommends that you do approve this plan, as it does meet our minimum standards and exceeds those as well.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Ms. Green regarding this item? Comments?
Ms. Green, if I may ask a question, you mentioned at the end there that this exceeds the staff's thoughts on this. I'm just curious what your thoughts were on what exceeds it.
So the design standards I'm thinking of are the minimum separation between the parking lot and the buildings. We have a minimum of 15 feet, and they, or we have a minimum of 10 feet, and they exceed that with a 7-foot sidewalk and 5-foot foundation plantings. They have more landscaping. I mean, it's than required in the GDO. Not a lot, but they have not just met the minimum standards, but done more where they could. Formal open space isn't required on this site. However, I encourage the applicants, since they had what looked like extra property that they really weren't using, the area here, but I guess where the building kind of makes an L, they've created a space that's like an outdoor area where people who can work there or can take lunch breaks or people visiting. So they've added some of the elements that we think add value to property. Even though formal open space would not have been required on this site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no further questions, I'll make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item is Parkway Office Park Lot 17, Goddard School. Initial design review of a 13,781 square foot daycare center on 1.7 acres, zoned Commercial Highway and GDO 3, located along Gateway Boulevard, Garrison Drive, and Carl Adams Drive. A&M Properties LLC is the developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you again. This next item is for you to consider initial design review for the development of Lot 17 of the Parkway Office Park subdivision. The Parkway Office Park is the one that is located near the city's Gateway Island and Greenway system. I have the smaller map pulled up right now. The site, of course, is identified with the blue outline, but I did just want to point out that it does have frontage along 3 streets. And on the northern side is the Murfreesboro Medical Clinic. And then on the southern side is the hospital. To give you some context from where it is located, it's directly located adjacent to a bank, and then of course some other medical offices. Here you have an ortho photo showing the site. You can see the layout of the bank and the parking lot to the Murfreesboro Medical Clinic just to the north. This property is in the Gateway Design Overlay District 3, GDO 3, which means it does require review and approval by the DRC. And it is required to go to the DRC before coming before Planning Commission. They have done that, and they've gotten quite a bit of feedback, and they still need to work the plans to address those comments, and I'll go through some of those with you. But I did just want to point out that that is a process that they're working through as well. Of course, the Murfreesboro Gateway Development Review Committee. The applicant is called Goddard School, but it's not actually a school. It's licensed as a daycare center in the state of Tennessee. But the Goddard School is a brand, and it's and so there's a style of learning, and there's certain design elements that they like to incorporate into their buildings, and to have that brand of Goddard School. This was a challenging site because it does have 3 fronts and a side. The Gateway, of course, designs four-sided architecture on all 4 elements, but when you face the street, there's really an emphasis on those elevations. What they've been able to do is push this building near the intersections, the 2 intersections, and have the parking between the building and the adjacent property. So the parking's not prominent. It's not what you see, the thing that's right out in front. A concern that staff had, though, were the state of Tennessee requires doors in the rooms of the daycare rooms for safety, which of course is really important to us as well. So we asked them to consider that design and look at how they needed to incorporate those doors. And so on this elevation, it's a perspective from the corner of Gateway Boulevard and Garrison Drive. And you can see there are many doors, but we've had them use the glass and the storefront to create a unified theme and not just look like a bunch of egress doors out into a sidewalk. And so I think that they've been able to do that very well. Something else that was a concern from the beginning was the site was entirely encompassed with bollards. They had bollards around the entire site. Of course, that was a concern for staff because it didn't really represent good design. And Mr. Taylor or somebody on his team was creative enough to come up with some solutions to that bollard design. Sometimes you see it with gas stations. Actually, the bollards are there, but they are a part of the fence that you see. So there's a pole, and it looks like a decorative aluminum fence around the site, but those bollards are actually built into that fence, and in my mind, the fence is basically slipped over those structural elements. And so it's really more aesthetically pleasing. It blends in with the area. It's not awkward with all those bollards. And near the entrance, which I think they've done a really good job near the entrances, they've actually designed structural seat walls. So the lower masonry walls you see that are brick or stone with the stone cap, they've placed those near the entrance, so they serve the purpose as a bollard because they're structural, but yet they're decorative, and they can also serve the formal open space that is required for this lot. So those were a couple things I wanted to point out to you that you wouldn't have noticed at first blush, but we spent quite a bit of time working with them on it. Staff and DRC was also concerned with the possible location of playgrounds, considering the 3 fronts on this lot again. And so pushing the building to the intersections and having the parking lot interior to the site was helpful for screening the parking, but also that gave them an opportunity to put the 2 playgrounds with playground equipment interior to the site so they're not as visible from rights of way. We also asked them to look at their equipment for the color scheme and have something that would be more compatible with the building. And so the colors proposed are very neutral colors, greens and taupe or brown. And then there is a playground or play area on the north side along Carl Adams Drive. Recreational equipment is not, of course, allowed in the front yards here. So that area is a little different from the other 2 playgrounds, and it doesn't have your typical monkey bars, slides, playground equipment, but it's more like a outdoor classroom. And so they have a flat mat where the kids, where it can be games that they can play on it. And they have a garden and some elements that can be outside in that playground area, but no structure. So you're not looking at large playground equipment right in the front yard. So I appreciated the way that they were able to design around that as well. The formal open space is near the entrance of the building, and the entrance is actually interior to the site. So we asked them when they looked at the design of the building to see what they can do to project a front on the streets, because we didn't, of course, want backs of buildings to face the streets. So that element is actually on the corner, so it's visible from at least two streets. The playground equipment. Let me go back. So here's the building. We went back and forth, and of course they were happy to work with us on a design that fit the area. Some of our concerns was that a daycare center may not be appropriate in this medical campus where you have very large buildings with a lot of mass and presence and scale. And so they were able to add some height to this building. They were able to vary the roof line. The pilasters, because they pushed the building as close to the streets as possible, they didn't have a lot of room to do the offsets. Originally, they came in at about 6 inches, but the DRC asked them to do a minimum of 12 inches on the stone columns, and so they were able to do that, and I think DRC was comfortable with that, and so I just wanted to point it out to you and see if you thought that was a step in the right direction as well. And of course, they added some of the elements on the other roof lines to add some continuity in the design. It does have a stone base and then brick, and so this is a predominantly brick and stone building. I think that the feedback we gave them really helped in the design of the building, and of course, they were happy to incorporate that as well. Actually, Mr. Taylor has the material board. Okay, so I'll wrap up my information now. I provided you staff comments. I think that you'll see this again, of course, at formal design or a final design review, but if you are comfortable with the plans, I recommend that you recommend approval, subject to all staff comments, and then see this again next month. I'd like to invite Mr. Taylor, and he can show you the material board so you can actually get a feel for the texture and colors on the building. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Hello, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Matt Taylor from SEC. We're the civils, landscape, and surveyors on the project. And to my right is Mr. Buddy Ferguson, the architect on the project. So most of what Ms. Green just gave kudos to deserves, Buddy deserves the recognition there. I was merely the conduit to get that to him. So we have enjoyed working with Ms. Green on those changes. Think it's a better project because of those changes, and we think that you'll be happy with those. I think the best picture probably for you to look at is probably A301. It's about 3/4 of the way back through this particular application. That is looking from the intersection of Gateway and Garrison toward the building. So I think you can see a lot of the character and those changes, the height, the pilasters, the materials that Ms. Green mentioned there. So outside of that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I've got the material board. Buddy's going to walk through each material for you, and then we'll leave this here for Ms. Green and for y'all to use in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. So it's fairly fair. I mean, basically, we went with the idea of just the base, the middle, and the cap. For the base, we have a smooth stone. It's basically like an 8x16 size. It looks similar to a cut limestone. Then there's a trim piece that separates the base from the masonry here that has a chiseled finish. It's real textured, and that runs all the way around the building. We've got over the doors and under the window sills, we have a lintel, a cut stone lintel, same material as the other trim piece. And then there's also a little different size. These are about 4 or 5 inches. There's a smaller one that runs around that matches up with those. We have metal canopies over the exit doors from the classrooms that, and it ties in with that. All the metal on the building is a dark bronze anodized finish, which is this. The cap piece is the smooth stone will go up to that cap piece, and then the cap is the exterior insulating finish system. It's an EFIS. It'll match the color of the cast stone. All the cast stones the same. I couldn't get a piece that matched the more buff stone, I think is what the color's called. This is just to show the texture there. And then all the glazing will be just 1 inch insulating glass. It has a low E coating on it, so it gives it a very slight tint. So that's pretty much it on the materials.
Okay.
I think that's all we've got unless you've got questions for us.
Okay, anybody have questions for Mr. Taylor or Mr. Ferguson? Looks really good, I think. So,
Thank you.
beautiful. Very nice. Above and beyond, as they say. So I think y'all have done a good job. Other questions and comments from the Planning Commission? And this is initial design review.
Not for me. I think it looks good.
Concerns? Anyone? This is our chance.
I think it looks good. I'll make a motion, we approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, that concludes our Gateway Design Overlay review, and next we have plats and plans. First item there is Westlawn Pavilion Lot 1, site plan review for 4,650 square foot gas station and 4,590 square foot gasoline canopy on 2.4 acres, zoned PUD, located along Veterans Parkway and Westlawn Boulevard. S.E. Murfreesboro Westlawn LLC is the developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you again. You're seeing me now because this project that's coming before you is a part of the Westlawn Plan Development that was approved in 2007. When it was approved in 2007, the commitment was made in the program book to meet all the Gateway Design Overlay District standards, although it doesn't necessarily follow the process. So where the other two items come before you a minimum of 2 times, this one will only come 1 time. So I just wanted to point that out in case you had any questions about the plan. So as I mentioned, it's Westlawn Pavilion, which is a part of the Westlawn development. On the map, the area the map where I pointed in the corner will be an out parcel of a larger grocery store. You, last year, I believe, approved a site plan for a Publix grocery store here. At the time, you didn't know it was Publix, but they've come out with it now. You just knew it was a grocery store. And then they created out parcels along the front, like you see in most of these grocery store developments. And they would like to go ahead and move forward with one of the out parcels before the Publix is ready to move forward. And so on this lot, Lot 1, is a proposed C-store gas station. So that's basically your traditional, or what you see today as a gas station and a little convenience market. And it's a 7-Eleven. And this may be our first new construction 7-Eleven in Murfreesboro. I know that I looked at other examples in the Nashville market, and when I spoke to the representatives, they said that most of their stores that they have in the Middle Tennessee area have been conversions, so it was a something else, and they converted it to 7-Eleven, so this is a new build. But hopefully when I show you the building, you'll be pleasantly surprised with their design here, with what you may have seen in the Nashville market. I think that they've done a pretty good job. So this site, of course, is undeveloped. It is at the intersection of Westlawn and Veterans Parkway. This will be a signalized intersection, and they're actively working on that now to add a signal at this location. Of course, the site plan includes 2 structures. One is for the C-store itself, and the other is for the detached fuel canopy, which of course is typical. The use is permitted in the plan development. The structure itself is about 27 feet tall, so it's a single-story structure. And of course, required to meet Gateway Design Overlay District standards. This is the proposed building. We did ask them to increase the amount of brick on the building because they had more EFS than we would allow in the Gateway typically. And so what you'll see is the cream colored with a pattern is the proposed brick. And then there's another brick color, of course, that's a darker, like brownish red. There's a stone base, and they are still proposing EFS here above the storefront, and these insets within the darker brick as well. You'll want to probably pay attention to the elevations that you're looking at. The bottom elevation is actually the one that faces Veterans Parkway, and so that's a major arterial, the street with a higher functioning classification. So that's the front. The other front is in the middle row, I guess on the left of your screen, it says Northwest Lawn. That's actually what faces Westlawn Boulevard. So per the zoning ordinance definitions, those are both fronts. The elevation that's called south faces interior to the site and, of course, would be oriented to a future adjacent out parcel for which it does have shared access. And then the elevation to the north is actually what faces the back or the public shopping center that will be constructed, and it's got some front elements very similar to the other elevations. So I just wanted to orient you for a moment on what's there. Initially, when we reviewed the plans, the canopy, and so the canopy does have the brick columns like we expect to see in the gateway, fully brick, with a roof that is not flat. And then they revised the fascia so that it was a neutral color. We typically allow a maximum of 8 inches of the signage primary color around there, and they were able to address that here. Here's the site plan. Of course, Westlawn Boulevard is at the top of the page, and Veterans is here. Publix is to the back. And they have a shared access drive per the master plan approved for the project for the future development on the out parcel just to the south. And then there's a shared access drive with the public shopping center behind the project. And so that was part of the approved master plan, and they are consistent with that. Our original comments, I did originally recommend that this plan be not approved because of the concerns we had with the driveway entrance onto Westlawn Boulevard. That was inconsistent with the master plan. So, and also that provided a friction that our transportation engineers were not comfortable with, but they they were happy to remove that to move this project forward. And I just wanted to point it out to you that they were able to revise the plans to address that. They still can make their turns. The engineer did run truck templates to make sure that they could navigate the site here. We have seen in some of these outdoor dining areas, but there's not an outdoor dining area here. I'm just giving that to you as information. When the project was initially submitted, they had nearly 50 bollards around the site. And so, of course, I asked them to look at a design that works, doing something where they weren't relying on bollards to compensate for other elements. And so they were able to expand the sidewalks to 7 feet like we require, remove the bollards and have raised sidewalks, except for where there are accessible spaces. And of course, we typically are very comfortable with them being located in the accessible spaces because you do see a change in elevation of the sidewalks, and we want to do what we can to accommodate people with different abilities, of course. And so they've vastly reduced the number of bollards on this site. I appreciate their work on that. And the bollards that they're proposing have a cover, so they're not bright primary colors, but they do have a sleeve over them, and they're more decorative in nature. The representatives had asked to join via Zoom. I don't know if they are on Zoom, but they had asked to be on Zoom. If not, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. At this point, they're not on Zoom. At this point, the plans are in good order. We would ask that you approve them, subject to all staff comments.
Ms. Green, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Will the road in the rear of the 7-Eleven will it be built as part of this project also, or is it already there, or is this not already there?
It's being built as a part of the project. I'm not sure who's on the hook financially for it. Recollection tells me Publix is. It's actually, Publix doesn't own the property. It's a developer who builds stores that Publix leases. But recollection tells me that they're building that, and they're also paying for the signal as well before this comes online. But it's just they wanted to, I think, go ahead and, we call it low-hanging fruit. If there was an easy development they could allow to move forward, to go ahead and allow that to move forward. But the developer, who is the Publix developer, is responsible for that.
Okay, but it would be built as part of this project, right?
Yep. So what we would do, the way we handle that is we say, we don't give 7-Eleven a certificate of occupancy till it's in. We don't care who builds it.
Yeah.
It has to be built according to these plans, and it has to be done before a certificate of occupancy.
Okay, because I was just thinking it might be difficult to get to this. I'm assuming this in the bottom left corner is the dumpster area. It would be difficult for a truck to get in and out of there if they're going to have to maneuver back and forth and not be able to get to that back street.
Yeah, you're right. They also couldn't get a fuel truck in and out.
I'm with you.
without those.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? I just have a general question.
Yes, ma'am.
Not really affecting the project, but just so I can maybe try to remember when people ask. Have we approved anything across the street in the one vacant lot across Westlawn Boulevard?
Across Westlawn Boulevard? We haven't approved anything. I've been having conversations with a potential developer, so you're talking right here.
Yes.
There's a restaurant looking at that location, and just beyond that one lot is an apartment complex.
Right.
But they have not come to you yet. They were anticipating submitting this past Thursday, but wanted a little bit more time to work on the architecture. It's a well-known restaurant here in Murfreesboro,
Okay.
but I don't think they've come out with who they are yet.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, concerns? If not,
I'll move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. All right. Our next item is the Haynes family, lots 3 through 6, master plan amendment and preliminary plat for 4 lots on 4.5 acres, zone commercial highway located along Memorial Boulevard. Track West Partners is the developer. Good afternoon, Mr. Cooper.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This plat and master plan before you are part of the commercial subdivision to the south of Aldi's on Memorial and to the east of Park at Murfreesboro, the apartment complex that is under construction right now. This is a revision of a master plan brought before you last August. It came to you as a 3-lot subdivision. They originally planned on a 4-lot, but we didn't think that they could fit in 4 lots. But alterations made by Huddleston Steel, Chris McGuire, we're comfortable with them placing 4 lots on that site. We think that they can make the site work. All public infrastructure improvements are to remain the same as the last master plan and plat approved last August. And the item is generally in good order, and I'm here for any questions you may have, and I ask that you approve the preliminary plat and master plan subject to all staff comments.
Okay. Questions or comments for Mr. Cooper?
Sorry, this is the plan.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, I make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Okay. Next, we have the Haynes family, lots 3 through 6, final plat for 4 lots on 4.5 acres. Zone commercial highway located along Memorial Boulevard. Track West Partners is the developer. Again, Mr. Cooper.
Hello again. This item is the final plat for the subdivision we just discussed. This would normally be on consent agenda. We just wanted to get it before you after approval of the preliminary plat. So, I mean, the plat is generally in good order, and I'm here for any questions.
Okay, any questions regarding the final plat?
If not, I'll move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. All right. Next, we have Riverview Cove, preliminary plat for 44 lots on 33.8 acres, zoned RS-15, located along Moccasin Trail, London Avenue, and Rigsby Avenue. Old South Properties is the developer. Mr. Cooper.
Hello, this is a preliminary plat for the Riverview Cove subdivision, which is adjacent to the Indian Springs and Riverview Park subdivisions. The developer of the site held a public hearing last year proposing to rezone this property to a PRD. However, given the opposition to the project by local residents, they decided to develop the property under the existing RS-15 zoning. Since the use is permitted by right, we have reviewed this plat for compliance with our subdivision regulations. This plan ties into the stub streets of Rigsby Avenue, London Avenue, and Moccasin Trail to promote interconnectivity, which is consistent with our subdivision regulations and design guidelines. I just wanted to let you know this is section 1 of 1. They haven't come forward with any plans to develop any property to the south or to the east of this location, so this is what they have before us. The plat is generally in good order, and we ask that approval be subject to all staff comments. I am here for any questions, as well as representatives from SEC.
Can I just ask, on the mail kiosk, are there parking, the parking is up there? around
Yes,
the mail kiosk?
there is parking off-street. There's a few spots right there. One handicap and
I
two.
see. Perfect.
This may not be the appropriate time, but there's been neighbors that have reached out to me, and I know they've reached out to Kathy also, with respects to the interconnectivity of this development. I just like for us to go on record as to why we want that, and so that if further questions come up in the future, you know, why we would want to connect to London, why we would want to connect to Rigsby, you know, why we would want to connect to Moccasin, because there's been quite a bit of discussion, at least from an email perspective, with regards to that. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. If you want me to take this, we've also been in contact with some of the residents regarding these connections, and in order to be consistent with other areas in town, we've always connected to these substreets, and they were originally connected to be extended onto this property. It's really just good planning to have access to as many streets as possible. If something were to ever happen on one street, you have access to multiple other ways in and out of the property. If Kay, do you want to say anything about interconnectivity on a transportation side of things, or?
And
Thanks.
Mr. Cooper, I'll just add, and as Mr. Halliburton said, we have had a lot of discussions and spent some time with several of the neighbors on this. And I just, you know, from a planning commission standpoint, I think this is extremely consistent with what we have done as a planning commission for my entire term on the planning commission. And if this had happened in the opposite direction, you know, and this was being developed and fields all the way around, we would have done the exact same thing and asked for these stub streets going out in all of these directions. And I do also think it was kind of nice and important to see that this subdivision, which I think these sections of it were probably developed maybe 40 years ago, I don't know, but they obviously at that time also saw the need for the connectivity into adjoining parcels and stubbed these streets out that long ago. It's not like a new thing that we just started doing in the last few years or some new planning measure. I'm sure all of you planners out there, the real ones sitting on the staff side, you know, this is just nothing to you all, but it is something that is extremely consistent. I think it's, you know, makes the plan a better plan. And as I told one of the neighbors that I spoke with, when I moved into Riverview subdivision in 1968, long before Mr. Cooper didn't even know, he wasn't around for sure. And the road ended at my house. There were only about 20 houses in Riverview at that time. The road ended at my house. There was a barbed wire fence across the end of the road and nothing but field. No Thompson Lane. Didn't connect out any of that. And some planners back then were, thinking ahead and let that road connect on through, and all of the other people that live in Riverview Park, Indian Springs, all the way, there's like 18 sections of Riverview, or 20, I don't know, at least 18. All of them got to go past what's my house. I was young at the time, but drive by our house to go out to their house. So the road opened up. I think it's a great subdivision. I don't think it's a problem that the road extended past my house and now there's all these people that drive by my house every day. That's the way it works. And I think we need the connectivity. I think it's good planning. And I don't have any issue with the different connections we have and even the future planned connections that are drawn into this plan. So,
to add, I think it would be even harder to sit here and approve a plan that would just connect to one street and leave out the other two, putting all the traffic onto the one street. So that's another thing to bring up as well.
it spreads it out.
Yeah.
Doesn't put everybody on one street. It spreads them out and gives everybody opportunities to get out, and also gives the people that are there now additional opportunities to get out in other directions they might not have been able to get out through before.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion. We approve subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Our next item is Parkway Place, Section 3, Master Plan Amendment and Preliminary Plat for one lot on 49.2 acres, zoned PID, located along Richard Reeves Drive. Alnier developer. Mr. Barbie.
Good
welcome.
afternoon, Chair Jones and Murfreesboro Planning Commission. Bring before you Parkway Place, Section 3. It's a master plan amendment and preliminary plat for one lot on 49.2 acres. If it were not for the master plan amendment to this would have been on the consent agenda. Parkway Place is located at the intersection, or this lot will be located at the intersection of Richard Reeves Drive and the newly named Logistics Way. It's just east of the Amazon facility, and it's also adjacent to the Magnolia Grove subdivision. It's one lot and plus the construction of Logistics Way on 49.2 acres. The plan is generally in good order, and we would request any approval be subject to all staff comments.
Okay, any questions? Comments?
Is this next to the same housing development that we made another developer build a fence?
It's
Okay,
the same development.
it is the same.
Yes.
So the fence is already there?
Yes, there's
Okay, all right, thank you.
long section.
Mr. Halliburton, if you can look on I guess you have it in front of you, I don't.
Yes, sir.
Big screen for you. This lot is actually directly adjacent to the interstate, so this section is not directly adjacent to Magnolia Trace. This development is adjacent to Magnolia Trace, but if you look on, Mr. Barbie, if you could bring the cursor down to the lot, there you go, and then there's the interstate directly to the bottom of that. So the lot and the roadway are closer to the interstate than they are to the residential subdivision.
I'm with you.
And the wall, the 9-foot wall that was required to be built was actually where Mr. Barbie's got his cursor right now.
Okay. We call that the Smotherman Wall? If there's no further comments, I'll make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton.
Aye.
Commissioner Russell.
Aye.
Commissioner Silas.
Aye.
Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance.
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, our next item is Parkway Place Warehouse, a site plan for 844,480 square feet. A warehouse distribution building on 49.2 acres, zoned PID, located along Richard Reeves Drive, south of Joby Jackson Parkway. Al Near, developer. Ms. Kerr.
Thank you, Chair Jones, members of the Planning Commission. This site plan review is for 844,480 square feet of speculative industrial warehouse located along Richard Reeves Drive, just south of Joby Jackson. The property is zoned a planned industrial development called Parkway Place. The total site area is 29.2 acres and proposes to have access to Richard Reeves Drive and a new public right-of-way along the northern property line. The primary building material of the project is tilt-up concrete that'll be painted. I believe they've added quite a few features for some vertical aspects to the building. It is a speculative warehouse. The building could possibly be occupied by multiple tenants and would be built as a flex space and modified internally to accommodate future tenants. All remaining staff comments will be addressed upon Planning Commission, subject to all staff comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Matt Taylor is here if he would like to add additional information to the project.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kerr.
I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to, myself as well as the architect are here to answer any questions about the site or the building itself.
So Matt, what about trucks coming to this thing? Where do they load and unload? Can we look at that?
Yes, sir. So, see if I can operate. That's the best one. So the dock or the building is set up as a kind of a cross dock. So they'll have docks here and here.
Okay.
So you could load or unload on either side, Mr. Halliburton. And all that traffic would come from Richard Reeves. There's a signal that was constructed up here with the Amazon project, and I think they are finishing this segment of road currently.
Is that just a 2-lane road, or is it a 2-lane with a middle?
I believe it's got a full 3-lane.
Okay.
That would match what we have designed in Logistics Way there.
Okay.
That would be our standard commercial collector type standard.
Thank you.
Since it's a speculative building, do you know what the clear height is?
I can tell you what the overall height is 47, and so I'm guessing that clear height is in the 40 range.
Yeah, it'll have to be around 40. We're good. I just wanted to know.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Taylor, is there a fence that runs also along I guess it would be the back portion of this property where it kind of comes to a peak like this? My only concern would be light pollution from the trucks. Was they back in if it's, yeah.
So up there, there's not, but there's extensive vegetation there right now. And I think that's in the neighborhood of about, I'll tell you. I think that's about 2,000 feet away from the property itself. And then Mr. Swanson, who owns all this property in between, I'm sure he has some sort of plans for buildings through there that would also help with that. And then as part of the PID, they are required to leave varying, I'll call it thicknesses or depths or widths of existing vegetation along that perimeter as well. And so I think those start at a minimum of either 50 or 75 feet wide and go up to as much as 100 to 150 feet wide. And then if they're thin on evergreen, they have to supplement it with evergreen materials at the time a site plan is submitted. So there will be extensive vegetation and screening through there. In addition, this property rises, and so that will help with the any noise as well as lights that might come from this particular site. And then we've also planned for a multitude of berming and evergreen screens along the roadway here to help mitigate our impacts not only on the neighbors but also on the public road we'll be building.
Thank you. And
Yes, sir.
one last question. I'm just curious, which side will face Interstate 24 of this building, if you don't mind me? I was a little unclear on that.
So if I can figure out how to, there we go. I need Mr. Huddleston or Mr. Blomley to give me a lesson. I tried hard to avoid that for 18 years, Sam. So what the western elevation, so the middle one on this particular, is what would face toward the interstate, and then the east would face toward the new public road.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So is there berming on the interstate side as well?
So the interstate side, we, as part of the PID, we left a 50-foot wide undisturbed strip. The only disturbance in there would be where we would cut through for a drainage swell because we have some significant water coming from off-site, and so that was a fairly small portion of that. The rest of that's being left in place with existing vegetation. And if you drive down through there, it's a pretty significant tree growth. It does a pretty good job blocking that. They're very mature trees.
Okay, any additional questions or comments from the Planning Commission? If not, we're ready for a motion.
No other questions or comments. I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, our next item, last item in this section is the City of Murfreesboro Fortress Boulevard and Blaze Drive two-lot subdivision, final plat for 2 lots on 17.6 acres, zoned RS-15, located along Fortress Boulevard and Blaze Drive, and mandatory referral for a land lease agreement for the same property with the Rutherford County government City of Murfreesboro developer. Mr. Barbie.
Chair Jones, glad to be back again. As you mentioned, they've got the City of Murfreesboro, Fortress Boulevard and Blaze Drive, two-lot subdivision. As a part of this, also contains a mandatory referral for a land lease on the same property with Rutherford County government for what is shown as Lot 2 on the final plat. The plat is generally in good order. We would ask that you condition any approval on staff's ability to determine a final location of the dividing line between the two lots prior to the recording of the plat. And I think Mr. DeMasi is here if you would have any questions for him. I'll also be glad to answer any questions that I can as well.
Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, the mandatory referral is for a land lease. City has been working with Rutherford County government on land lease for the construction of a future office building on that property. And this property is the same property that where the new fire station on Blaze Drive is located. It's at the northwest corner of Fortress Boulevard and Blaze Drive. There's the fire station and the telecommunications tower for emergency services on this property. City administration and city legal have been working with the county. The city will own both lots. However, the county would lease, as Mr. Barbie mentioned, the area where their office building would be located on lot number 2. So this would be for a mandatory referral for that land lease. As Mr. Barbie mentioned, we would like the latitude as staff to be able to work with the county on where the actual new lot line between lots 1 and 2 need to be located based upon the final plans for the proposed office building, which the property is zoned RS15, so it will be required to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit if and when it moves forward. If you have any questions about the specifics of the project, Mr. DeMasi is here, and Mr. Huddleston with the city is here as well, can answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Blomley.
When the city and the county enter into a land lease agreement like this, is it in perpetuity or is it 100-year? I'm just curious.
I think I would defer to Mr. Huddleston or Mr. Hankins, who might have more knowledge of what the plan is for that.
Mr. Halliburton, don't know the exact terms. Our legal department's drafted that up. Mr. Ives, who would normally be here today, but Mr. Hankins filling in for him. But it would be a long-term lease agreement and would have renewable terms in there. It's our idea to allow the county, as long as they're using it consistent with the agreement, to be out there for as long as they need to be. And we have some other facilities. I don't know that Mr. Blomley explained all of that. We have some other facilities potentially planned for this property as well that looks like it would be a joint project between the city and the county. And they put together a master plan there, and the master plan was the basis of the agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huddleston. Any other questions or comments?
No other questions. I make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I would ask, I think it is 2 separate items, but we had it lumped into one. If we could get a separate motion for the mandatory referral, I think that would probably be cleaner.
Absolutely. So we will need a second motion and vote on the mandatory referral for the land lease agreement. If we could have a motion. Thanks.
I move that we approve the mandatory referral agreement.
subject to all.
Subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, next we're moving on to new business. We have one item there today, and it is a zoning application for approximately 1.28 acres located along South Bilbro Avenue and East State Street to be rezoned from RS8 and CCO to PRD, the row on Bilbro PRD, and CCO. Blue Sky Construction, Inc. is the applicant. Ms. Kerr?
Thank you, Chair Jones. Members of the Planning Commission, the subject property is located on the east side of South Bilbro Avenue and along the north side of East State Street. The property consists of 5 parcels totaling 1.2 acres. The parcels are currently developed with single-family dwellings and are zoned RS8. The applicant wishes to rezone the properties to PRD. The proposed PRD would consist of 18-unit townhome development, and they will be named the row on Bilbro. The proposed gross density would be 14 dwelling units per acre. The subject property is also located within the CCO, the City Core Overlay District, and the proposed rezoning would not affect that CCO zoning. The surrounding zoning is primarily RS8, which is Single Family Residential District 8. The primary surrounding land uses are single-family dwellings, although there is one non-conforming duplex that is located directly to the north of this subject property. The development would have access to East State Street and South Bilbro Avenue. The proposed development would include 3 buildings. Let's see if I can get to the site plan to show you. Would be 3 sets of buildings. Have 8 units along South Bilbro, 3 units along East State Street. The ones along East State Street and Bilbro will be 3-bedroom units with a rooftop patios on each of those. And then the units in the back, there's 7 of those. And they would have surface parking, a back patio, and a storage building in the back. All of the 3-bedroom units would have 2 car garages plus 2 service parking garages. They will need the garages to meet their required parking requirements. The surface parking would accommodate for the 7 units in the back, and it would leave 1 parking spot for a guest for the development. The primary exterior materials would be painted brick, with metal awnings at the entrances and cementous siding for the rooftop patio access porticos. The minimum building setbacks for the development would be 8 feet along South Bilbro Avenue and East State Street, and 10 feet on the north and the east property lines. They will be having a 10-foot buffer, type B buffer, along with a privacy fence as opposed to a type D buffer, due to the fact that there are residential single-family homes on either the north and the east side of this development. The pattern book states that development will include approximately 29% of the total lot as open space. The site is required to contain 5% formal open space, and the applicant is proposing 10.5% formal open space. The formal open space internal to the site consists of a courtyard seating area with stamped concrete patio area, an arbor with a fire pit, and enhanced landscaping areas within the open space grassy area in front of these 7 units here. The following exceptions to the standard RSA Type 3 zoning regulations are proposed. 1, front setbacks to be 8 foot as opposed to 30 foot, and side and rear setbacks to be 10 foot to accommodate required landscaping buffer between the development and the neighboring RS8 zone. Another exception is that the rooftop patio areas be allowed to be included in the calculation of formal open space. Also, a reduction in the required 18-inch step-up at the front elevation into the front of the home to go from 18 inches down to 6 inches. Type 3, RSA Type 3 townhomes are required to have a minimum finished floor elevation of 18 inches above grade when the front setback is less than 30. An exception to allow the use of solid waste cart, valet garbage service in lieu of the required dumpster. We did request that they put a location for a dumpster on the site plan for future use in the event that this program book is approved. And an exception to allow a Type D buffer with a privacy fence in lieu of a Type D buffer on property lines adjacent to the single-family residential zoning. The future land use map recommends the subject property to be developed with, let me get back to that map. Well, I don't work this real either, Matt. The future land use map recommends that the subject property develop with a suburban residential land use character as shown in the map in your agenda. The classification intends to serve as a transition from an urban to a rural residential development and is predominantly located along the peripheral of the city. The comprehensive plan calls out RS-15, RS-12, and RS-10 as existing zoning districts that are compatible with this designation. 2.0 to 3.54 dwelling units per acre is the recommended density. While single-family residential attached uses are consistent with the suburban residential land use character, in certain circumstances, the more intense single-family residential attached use that is proposed at 14 dwelling units per acre is not consistent with the vision for the suburban residential land use character. The Planning Commission will need to determine whether this is an appropriate instance to deviate from the recommendations of the future land use map. The department staff is supportive of this zoning request, including the deviation from the future land use map, because the proposed residential land use will be compatible with the surrounding residential land uses. Compact, dense development is desirable in and around downtown and promotes walkability. And the proposed development will contribute to the vitality and quality of life of the downtown, continuing the positive trend toward investment in the area. A copy of the pattern book has been included with your agenda materials. The Planning Commission will need to schedule this matter for a public hearing. Staff recommends a public hearing date of February 3rd, 2021. Mr. Clyde Roundtree, representing the applicant, is also available to give a presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. Madam Chair, Planning Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to present to you the row on Bilbro. I'm accompanied by Mr. Brian Moore, Brian Burns, who's behind me, and Brian will be available for any questions you may have related to this project as well. And this is, I just want to give Brian some credit. This is the second infill project that he has been a part of. The first one was East Vine Village, and it's coming along very nicely. It's, he said he's doing drywall there now. I'm not sure if you've driven by that, but it's coming out really nice. The scale feels really great. We're able to preserve some existing trees, and so it fit in nicely. So as I mentioned, this is the second one that he would like to attempt and in the downtown city core overlay. That is the motivation for this location, is that he's leveraging the vision of the city of taking advantage of the city core overlay. So we're excited to team with him on this project. As Amelia mentioned, it's 5 lots consistent to each other, adjacent to one another. These lots came up at auction, and Mr. Burns bought all of them simultaneously. A little history on these pieces of property. They were rental properties. They've been probably in the rental pool, I don't know how many years, but many, many years. They were owned by an individual who passed away, and so they were sold as a block. So that created a great opportunity for a really nice infill project versus a one lot kind of trying to work it out. Brian was able to get 5. And so the houses, I've got some pictures of the houses. I think it's pretty important to look at them. As mentioned, because it's downtown, it has old mature trees and it's got a nice character. It's just this particular area has seen a little regression in terms of quality. A lot of that's because of the rental nature of the homes. So these are 4 of the homes. There are 5 that will be taken down, but it kind of see the siding's been pulled off. A lot of the roof's missing. They're in pretty rough shape, and they're cute. I mean, it could be restored and be something nice, but I think they're pretty much beyond that capability for feasibility for a, kind of a remodeling type of project. So Mr. Burns was excited about the opportunity of taking something out that was old and was underutilized and bringing something that would bringing something new that would bring more revitalization. Now, the key that we're finding out, at least from my history with the CCO, is that the depth of the lots downtown is really helping us. These lots are significantly deep, so we're able to put a double row of whatever we want to introduce. So that's one of the key components that's going to help the CCO, is just the overall depth of the site itself. As was mentioned by Amelia, we are proposing 18 units versus the 5 that are existing. There are 11 3-bedrooms. The 3 bedrooms will have the rooftop gardens, or rooftop patios, and they are adjacent to Bilbro and East State Street. There'll be 7 2-bedroom homes, and as I mentioned, you see how the depth of the lot is really playing into this. So the 2-bedroom homes are basically on the rear property line. As far as formal open space, we are asking for an exception that the rooftops have that capability be included in our formal open space. We feel like that's logical. A lot of the homes going downtown will have rooftop patios. It's a great way for providing open space, but also kind of secured open space. And we also introduced the idea of bringing our kind of formal open space into the center of the property. I'm working on another one that's in process as well. And that's kind of a strategy to make sure that our formal open space has a real sense of security to it, that you don't feel like you're on the edge of the property, but you're kind of internal to the property. If you look at the site plan, right in the center of everything's a mail kiosk, but I think the formal open space is a real anchor, and that'll be primarily used by the 2-bedroom homes. It'll be a gathering area for the whole development, but we're anticipating the 2-bedroom homes using that primarily. The 3-bedroom homes will be using their rooftops. As Amelia mentioned, all the 2-bedrooms have patios in the rear, and if you look on the rear of the 2-bedrooms, there is a sidewalk. Mr. Burns would like to have LA-style trash pickup, so everyone will have a pull cart, and they'll basically pull it down the sidewalk and pull it out too. If you look at the drive that's on South Bilbro, there's a pad here. If I can point to, I'm not sure if I can draw on it or not, but that's where they'll store the poly carts on trash day to make sure there is a place versus them just kind of lining the street. So we have a designated kind of staging area for the poly carts themselves. We had several generations about circulation. Planning staff felt what is important, and Mr. Burns agrees, that we have access both onto South Bilbro and onto East State Street. All of our drainage will be kind of via porous pavers and internal to the site. No detention pond as far as planning goes right now. We met with Valerie to make sure all the vaults and all the concerns with utilities are satisfied. So every little white square that you see on the edge of the building, that really is where the utility vaults will be in relationship. When you're working tighter sites, that's something we're working through with planning to make sure that those are compensated for, because if they get overlooked, it's tough to kind of compensate for later. As Amelia mentioned, we have a guest space for the 2 bedrooms. We are over parked for the 3 bedrooms. We have 2 car garages plus 2 spaces outside the garage. So in this particular situation, we're definitely over parked. We have 60 spaces provided that include the garages, where 36 spaces are required. So we feel really good about that. There will be horizontal property regimes, which is critical. This is a home ownership kind of process versus a rental process. And at the end of the day, I think Mr. Burns is committed to making sure that his projects are fantastic, but also committed to the downtown area, because this is part of the vision that you all have, and he's really inclined to adapt your vision as well. So we're excited about it. This drawing shows the 3-bedroom homes. They're a little bit wider. These will face East Vine Street as well as, Bilbro Street as well as East State Street. The primary architectural elements worth noting are it has 2 different colored painted brick. The top parapet is kind of a darker color, whether that's a black or a gray, that's still in process. but it will be primarily a white building. The sills and the trim, the base sills and the headers above the windows will have also an accent color. The doors will be contemporary style, and there'll be a metal awning that'll be associated with the front entrances, as well as 2 lamps that'll have a contemporary character as well. The rear of the buildings will be, that's that middle section, those are the rears, and they'll have more of a contemporary style garage door, and the downspouts, all that will be kind of tied into more of a contemporary look with a center light over the garage door. The 2 bottom elevations are the side elevations, and we added windows to make sure that it didn't have kind of a dead-end look on the edge of the building, so there is some human scale, pedestrian scale elements to the edge of the building, the sides of the building. And overall, the 2-bedroom units are similar. They're a little bit, obviously a little narrower. And just want to bring to your attention that on the back, you can see kind of a repetitive storage element, storage room area. That's in the center section, center elevation. And that's because we've just learned through the process that we need to provide some exterior storage for those 2-bedroom units as well. And there will be a patio that basically is in between those storage units. So you'll have a sense of private patio on those rear units. And as was mentioned, there'll be a sidewalk that connects all of them to the parking area so that you can run your poly carts down that strip. Overall landscaping will provide foundation planting on all the units that are, all the fronts of the units. We'll have streetscape type planting along South Bilbro as well as East State Street. We'll have a type B buffer, that's a pretty dense buffer in relationship to basically the rear and side of the property, as well as a privacy fence. We're showing a PVC privacy fence, and that's really to kind of creating kind of cross circulation through the property, and just to provide more of a, more of a protected feel for the homes themselves. And last but not least, the overall formal open spaces was mentioned. We just have a conceptual diagram of the rooftop that's in the top left corner that kind of shows how it'll lay out. There will be AC units on the roofs, so that's a way to get those off the ground and allow us to leverage some of the roof for some of the mechanical. The fire pit area is shown on the bottom right. It's kind of a gathering area, as was mentioned, with some swings and a fire pit, stamped concrete, landscaping around it. Mr. Burns is, again, committed to making sure the landscape package, the architectural character of the buildings is first class. And so we're excited about introducing the project to you. We're available for any questions you may have, but thank you for the opportunity to present it to you. As Amelia mentioned, the exceptions were listed. One that Brian may need to explain is the 6-inch step into the building versus the 18. That's something he's really would like to make sure that happens. And obviously a reduction in the buffer, but adding the fence plus the 2 evergreens is going to satisfy what we consider as buffer concerns. And with that in mind, that's the end of the presentation, but thank you for hearing us. And Mr. Burns, do you have anything to add?
We're here for questions.
Okay, so we're available for questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Clyde,
Yes, sir.
I think it was page 10, maybe, at the bottom. But anyway, the drawing of the units themselves on the east side, can you pull that picture up?
Can.
Yeah, whoa, no, go back one. So the units that are on the east side, do they have garages? And if so, how do you get in and out of them? I'm a little lost.
Mr. Halliburton, the units on the top right-hand corner
Yeah.
are the 2-bedroom units. Those are surface parked. Those are 2-bedroom, no garages.
Okay.
So the parking that relates to those units
It's
is what's out
just,
front.
okay.
And as you bend around the building, those 3 are also associated with the 2 bedrooms.
Okay. So then my next question is, I know as part of the CCO, we talked about height variation between adjacent properties. We don't have any issues here with that. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I think you're allowed 1.5 times the adjacent building, and we are, I believe we're fine. We'd have to verify. I would verify that. They're 2-story units. The only thing that happens, and it shows up on the elevation that's worth noting, is that you can see it there, Ken, on the second elevation, you see where the stairwell roof comes in. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's just one part of the section.
Yeah, that's just where the stairs are. That's the highest point of the building.
Okay.
We do have it marked out. I believe we have it identified as, let me verify that height. We were asked to call it out in the book, so one moment.
36 or 40 feet.
Yeah, 36 max. That's at the top of the stairwell.
Okay.
Yeah, the units themselves shouldn't be any higher much than 20.
Yeah, there's basically two-story units.
All right.
It's the same blueprint we're building on Vine Street, which is minus the roof.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt, based on the CCO, would the access be an issue?
Yep. I would interpret these as two-story units. The only thing that's protruding out above the roof line is the stairwell leading out to the rooftop patios, and the units adjacent are I'm assuming one-story units, and the two-story units would be permitted regardless by the CCO. So I see nothing here that would warrant an additional exception regarding the height.
Okay.
Great question.
And I'll make, this is just a general comment, and Mr. Roundtree showed pictures. I drove by this property. This is very much a upgrade to this property. I don't know if y'all have been by there, but those pictures don't even reflect how bad a shape some of these structures are.
I agree.
And I agree. And Mr. Burns, you've done some very, very nice projects around town, and I'm very excited to see that you're going to have this project. I do have a couple of things that I want to ask about and make sure that I have straight in my mind before we would get to a public hearing. The parking that we talked about, I thought I heard Ms. Kerr say we would have one additional visitor spot, but then you, I thought, said that anyway, I'm concerned if we only have one visitor spot, because in any of the more dense properties that we've approved, we've normally required, some extra parking for visitors. And I understand we're in the downtown, so I know it can't be exactly the same, but I also don't want this to turn into not what we want to see in our downtown, with just a bunch of people parked every which direction and blocking up the streets and junky looking.
The site plan?
Yeah, if you could pull the site plan.
Yeah.
This is one of the things we struggle with staff, and we had some extra parking on one side, but it kind of went back and said, do we want green space or do we want parking there? And so we went with the green space. We could put more parking in, but then we lose some green space. It just comes down to what you guys would rather see. I'm not a huge fan personally of street parking, but I know that's part of living downtown is street parking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say this, Mr. Jones, it's tricky because we're over part for the 3-bedroom, because really 2 is required in the CCO, and we've really got 4 spaces, so we don't expect any sort of overflow from those. So really our biggest concern is the surface parking, and as Brian was mentioned, those 3 parking spaces that are along that unit that are kind of on their own, if you can see them I can't quite point to it, but as Brian's mentioning, those 3, we had 5 there before, and we kind of gave 2 up to kind of give it more green space along that side.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did add the island in the middle of that parking run, just to kind of soften it as well, to create some green space. So there's some room for a little bit of expansion in parking if they deem that necessary. It's really kind of the exception we're asking for is the rooftops. If they can account towards the formal open space, we might be able to work with Amelia to find a few more spaces on in this area. But that's what kind of drove the parking calculations. We're adequately parked, but we're not over parked as far as the 2 bedrooms are concerned.
It's
And
my
I,
personal-
go ahead. Well,
it's my personal opinion, where you see those parking spots at the end there. I can landscape enough. I'm going to throw so much landscaping in front of those. I don't know that you're gaining that much off that little bit of green space. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I personally would rather see that parking.
Which space are you?
I couldn't get the mouse to work.
It's the 3, I'm sorry, yeah,
of the
there's the mouse.
3
Yeah, right here,
on
those
East
3
State
ones.
Street.
Yeah, right, no, these guys right there.
Oh, those
Yeah, see,
3
we could run
spots.
that, you can see how we could easily add spaces right along that run, but we were trying to respect foundation planting and the side of the building as well, so that was our tension point. And then that's the island we added just to kind of break up the run, you know, because we had more parking spaces without an island.
And see, I'd rather see that island gone personally and see parking, because really, I don't know that I want a whole lot of landscaping in that island, because I want that to be my centerpiece on the front there with the gazebo and the swings and all the landscape I'm doing there. And these are tough to figure out sometimes.
So if you look at your formal space, if you take out the rooftops, you need it?
Take out the rooftops?
Yeah. The rooftops is counting as formal space. You needed 2,788 square feet for formal space. You take the rooftops out, you had like 19,000 with the rooftops.
Right.
Take them out, you still meet the 2,788?
No, we're either right on it or maybe, I think we were okay. I don't know the number offhand, Warren, but I can verify that with you. We have some green space here that could probably be added. We're not really bringing that in our calculation because there's really no function to it. It's just a sidewalk, but there's a chance if we needed it, we could grab onto that. But the primary focus has really been, you know, obviously where the sidewalks are, and the idea of walking the dog around the loop and having, just having some landscape and a place to sit internal to the site was really the goal. And then obviously we're not counting our patio areas either in the back, but they're not considered.
I'll just give you my opinion. So I don't think you don't have an issue with the 3-bedroom units. You do have an issue with the 2-bedroom units, because if you only have parking spaces for those and no guests, those guys are gonna get overcrowded and you're gonna have a parking issue. I would rather see you lower your green space and get them 2 or 3 more parking spaces for their guests, because they're going to have guests.
I tend to agree with you. I think that, because I don't like street parking. I've been wondering if I should even put it in the restrictions where you don't allow street parking there, but then.
Yeah. The challenge with on-street parking here is going to be, your on-street parking is going to be in front of all of your 2-bedroom units and crowd them out. You don't have a lot of space there. You got 8 feet. So if you put on-street parking there, or they start parking in front of them, they're going to feel crowded out.
Yeah, we could easily add another 3 spaces, right now where that green space is. It's just a matter of, and take out the island, but that's working with the staff on that, what's best.
And I can throw enough landscaping on the front of those 2 bedrooms that I don't think we'll lose any of the looks or the feel of it.
Well, that was my other concern, as Mr. Russell mentioned, the formal open space. I guess I've got a concern, as he does, about allowing you to count that as formal open space when it's private space. I mean, it's only open space for the people that live there and any guests they might have. It is not formal open space for the development. And so somehow or another, I would think we got to figure that part out.
Right.
And if we take it up with parking spaces, I think we know what the other option is. I mean, there's space on this.
Right.
There's space here. And it's how many buildings can you fit in there? And I'm not sure that you can fit exactly as many in there, exactly as many units as you might like to if we get the open space and the parking like it needs to be. But still should allow for a really nice project.
Do you have any feel, Madam Jones, about how many more spaces you'd feel comfortable with on 2-bedroom? I mean, we have 1 right now. We got 7 units with 1. Would another 2? I mean, it becomes, if you're within the regulations, but maybe the regulations may not be as flexible as they need to be in that regard. Do we just add another 2, or is it another 5? Where does that number come from, in your opinion?
Well, I guess we're used to seeing the little clusters of 5 or 6 spots that are there for guests, because anytime you're having people over, more than likely, even 1 unit is having 2 people over. And,
right.
But very often, 1 unit is having 10 people over. So, if you have 2 units happen to have something or an event or on the same night, then we've got a problem, big problem.
Ms. Jones, if I may interject.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I would like to point out is that the the 3-bedroom units, and I think Mr. Russell alluded to this a moment ago, the 3-bedroom units exceed our minimum parking requirements, each have 4.
Yes.
Because they're going to be restricting the garages for parking, so each have 4 when they're only required 2. So overall, the site exceeds our minimum parking requirements. The problem is that the 7 2-bedroom units are, for all intents and purposes, cannot use the spaces that are in back of the garages of the 3-bedroom units. So we have a total of 7 units where there is not a whole lot of guest parking available. And so I think it's, you know, what you feel comfortable with as a number of guest parking spaces for the 2-bedroom units, whether that's, you know, they're showing 1, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5. But also bear in mind that the more urban setting, that on-street parking is something that is more typical of an urban setting, and even though Mr. Burns may not like on-street parking, it's something that is, you know, as you go to Nashville and areas that have more dense developments like this, on-street parking is not atypical, and it just ends up becoming kind of a fact of life. So that frontage along South Bilbro Avenue ends up becoming kind of a de facto guest parking area because there really aren't any driveways along there, and that's where the overflow would go to, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Hey, Matthew, is the road that you're talking about having the on-street parking, is the width of that road capable of having a parked car and 2 more cars traveling against traffic to one another? And also, is there some expectation that the other side of the road, that people could park on street there as well?
Mr. LaLance, I don't know the exact width. I think that on-street parking is currently permitted on either side of the street right now. I don't think that it's prohibited on either side, and so this would be a continuation of that the current condition. Certainly, I don't expect that the width of this roadway is the 33-foot cross-section for on-street parking and 2 lanes of traffic to coexist at the same time. No, sir, I don't believe that would be the case.
So I can answer that question, since I probably I'm in that area more than anybody. I'm a deacon at First Baptist Church, and the answer is no. We restrict our parking, so we park a lot on the streets. We have to restrict our parking on that street for a certain amount of distance and on State Street, and it's not because of 2-lane flow, it's because of emergency vehicles. You can't get them through.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I want to apologize to you guys. I am not able to see the information that you're seeing via this Zoom call. I think they weren't able to work out sharing the information with me, so I'm not able to get a full understanding of this. So thanks for helping me on that.
And if you look at the image B, it does show there are people that park on the street. It's kind of showing all the way down on the left-hand side, and as Mr. Russell said, it's probably one side or the other how people are kind of using it at any given moment. Every time I went to the site on Bilbro, I did park on the street. I definitely feel like East State is a narrower section.
Yeah, it is. Ms. Knoll just pulled up GIS on our on her laptop. The right-of-way width, or the actual roadway width, not the right-of-way, but the actual pavement width along South Bilbro is approximately 26 feet wide, and the right-of-way width of East State Street is about 20 feet wide, or the pavement width on East State Street is about 20 feet. So I think the on-street parking could occur more comfortably on South Bilbro than it could on East State Street.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing Kathy say, and that I would sort of, well, let me not put words in her mouth, but just sort of say what I'm thinking. I think this becomes a lot bigger of an issue the more density we put in there. And so, what we've been seeing as far as on-street parking, I'm afraid, I just want to make sure we're not encouraging more on-street parking in areas where it really doesn't fit when we could be addressing it now. So I would probably be in favor of adding a few spots. And again, I can't get a full understanding of this, and I apologize for that, but it seems to me like we may want to address that a little bit in some way.
I think it'd be easy for us to add, and I need to verify to Mr. Russell's concern and to Kathy's concern that we're not, downplaying formal open space, but there may be we may have to ask for an exception on a reduction slightly. I think we're probably okay, but I don't have that number in front of me. But if we could add another 3 or 4 spaces, along that area where we already have the 3 started, I think that'd be a real easy solution and probably not impact the quality of life inside from an open space standpoint. And I think this is an opportunity. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, just kind of thinking about it, but we could parallel park there too if we had to, probably another 2 spaces, or try to include that into some kind of program that allows it to be qualified for formal open space. Right now, we're just, like I said, it's a walkway in a yard area that it's really not being counted.
Could you put parallel spots on that northwest corner as you walk in off that entrance? So right north of the entrance?
On the north side up there?
Right where your arrow is.
No, we're tight there, and we added that. That's that concrete pad for the polycart storage. So we have to have some foundation planting and the sidewalk on the other side. So we're tight there. This is really our opportunity. The vault's over on the other side, so it wouldn't impede any sort of development in that little pocket. But it's not the most efficient parking, but it could add a few spaces if we needed to. And we could do both or either or one of, so.
Hey, while you're up there, Clyde, now I don't want to shift gears yet until we work through this parking, but so I don't keep having to interrupt without knowing if I'm interrupting at a bad time or not. I do want to ask a question about the sewer basin and whether or not this particular piece of property is in the sewer basin that extends out East Main Street, or is it in a sewer basin that goes towards downtown? I think we're close enough downtown, and I don't know if anybody in the room is familiar with why I'm asking, but I want to make sure this isn't the same basin where we had to deny, a development, or the council denied a development due to us not having sewer.
Okay. I
Matthew,
understand the
are you
question,
familiar with
Mr.
that?
Lance, and we've got some people kind of, we're going to get an answer here.
Yes.
Kerr.
All right, thanks.
The CCO area is exempt from the sewer allocation ordinance due to the fact that the areas that are within the CCO do have sewer capacity.
Okay, good deal. I was afraid this might be that same basin that was, that leads out to the little Mercury Drive area where we had the problems.
Yeah,
That's
this
good.
goes with the downtown.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. LaLance, Mr. Huddleston has been diligently working on his laptop over there, and he has indicated that this is not in one of the problematic basins.
Great, thank you.
Okay. What other questions and concerns or suggestions, anything we have that we would like to discuss on this item of business? And our ultimate goal on this will be to schedule a public hearing, but we also want to bring up any questions or concerns at this point in time and not wait until the public hearing. So, Mr. Burns, did you?
I just have one comment. This project, I think, will really start. Blake Smith had done a really good job of 1st and 2nd Street. And then Vine Street's really come along nice with stuff that's been built over there the last 2 years. I think this really jumpstarts this street. We tried to go something totally different than what's there because what's there probably doesn't need to stay there. And eventually, I'm hoping this project will make where those are profitable for those people to sell those houses, and we can do other projects on this street.
Mm-hmm.
The density is the only way I can justify paying what you have to pay to do it. I know that's not what y'all care about, but that's how we have to justify it to do it. And I think that's the balance, trying to not make it where it's so crowded, but still make the project look the way we want it to look. I've always been very proud of everything we've done, and I don't want this one to be any different, so.
And we don't either. I don't think any of us disagree with the fact that we think this is going to be a very nice and extreme improvement to the area. And I think all of us just want to make sure that we get it done right, both from your end, because of course if you're not successful, profitable at this one, you can't move on to the next one. But, you know, I'm just going to say, does 6 units versus 7 mean the difference in whether that project can be successful or not for you? I don't know. Or is, you know, there's whatever we can do to work out what our concerns about the parking and the open space. And I don't think every answer is, I need a variance on the open space.
Does it make it or break it? No, it does not. It makes it better for me. I don't know how to answer that where it doesn't sound like
Right.
that. If I deleted one of those units on the very end over, I don't know that you really get much. You got 2 less cars, I guess, so you need less parking, but I don't know that you really get much more parking. I don't know that it really helps open up some spot that somebody's just going to use. I have a lot of friends in Nashville that have, for the last 7, 8, 9 years around the fairgrounds in Nashville, have built these projects, and the rooftops they put on them are incredible. There's fireplaces on them, there's grills on them. It's just, that's where you want to hang out and do everything, is up there.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of what I didn't want to do the 3 stories like it was done over on I guess Church Street, because I thought it would add too much height there. So I thought the 2-story rooftop would be a good, I've never seen a 2-story rooftop built in Murfreesboro, so I thought this would be a good place to try them. And
Love it.
so
I do love it. I just think that we got to figure out what is that right balance between the number of units, the parking, and the open space. And I know y'all can figure that out.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may ask, just for guidance for the applicant, for those 7 units, what would the target number of guest parking spaces that you would like for them to hit in their pattern book, just so that they have a goal to design to?
I mean, I think I would be thinking at least 4 or 5 at a minimum.
I think 4.
4 guest spaces. Okay.
Thank you. I think that'll be helpful to them as they
And I'll give my 2 cents. I think they can get the 4, even like they were talking about, if they parallel near East State Street and then add 2 more on the side of the 7 2-bedroom condo units. And my comment is that if we can get close to this formal open space, and even if it's somewhat less based upon the project itself, I'd be in favor of giving that deviation or allowance because of the nature of the project in and of itself. That's strictly my opinion.
I agree. It's a good-looking project.
And I just think it's misleading to say formal open space required is 2,700 square feet and the formal open space provided is 19,000 square feet. I don't think that's public and private. Maybe you can divide that out or something. I still like seeing that, and I think it's nice to point out that additional open space that you're providing on those rooftops. I think that's huge, but I think that needs to be separated, if you don't mind.
For sure.
Can I add to that?
Yes, sir.
Quickly, that, I completely agree with Mr. Burns from the standpoint of that this could kind of set a tone and to hopefully, expand on this in the future. And so whatever decisions we make, however we treat this open space, these parking spaces right now, is certainly, in this case, going to be a precedent, and going to be what other people are going to come in there looking at. So, that's density, that's parking spaces, that's open space. So I would think we need to be extra careful about how we treat those things with this project.
Do y'all have other questions for us?
No, I just want to make sure we understand the parking. So we want to add, if we can make it work, we want to add the parking down where we got the 2 spaces and the handicap space.
And you can get 2 more in there?
I think two or three in there. And then I don't like the island up there. I have no
It's
problem.
just going to
getting rid
get
of
run over,
Yeah,
right?
I just think it's useless. I think I could, like I said, I can make it look good enough with those around the gazebo. I plan on just throwing all the stops at the landscape on there, that I don't think that island does anything but take away a parking spot. And I know they have a purpose, but in this particular project, it may just not have as much of a purpose.
Well, and you could probably even get 1 more. I know, again, I'm eating into that open space, but back there where you've got the little 22-foot, for the curvature at the.
Right, that's for the dumpster,
side.
they wanted us to respect a dumpster
Oh, that's
pad to
right.
make
We need the
sure
dumpster up there.
that if, in the future, we needed to accommodate. I think the challenge is that the CCO is really encouraging urban development, and is encouraging a minimum parking, so we have to, if it's really maximum 2 parking spaces per unit, and you meet those requirements, obviously we met those requirements, but now we're getting to the reality of how does it really work. And as Matthew mentioned, I think the on-street parking for a guest event or, an an unusual event, it probably will flow out to the street. And I think to accommodate reality is a great thing. But I know that a lot of our development communities really fighting, that's why they're here, because they know that the parking requirements have been, reduced to make it, more palatable as far as developing in these areas that are a little bit more of for lack of a better term, a little more risky. So I just want to make sure that we're not kind of deviating from the CCO just to kind of put on another standard that when, I know those are kind of brought through and worked through. So, we're going to more than willingly do it, but I just want, just get for clarification for the future, because I know all of our projects that we're doing downtown, it has this, it is, guest parking has really not been brought into the mix just because of the nature of it. And then we're making the assumption that everyone with a 2-bedroom has 2 cars, and that may not be, that's not a bad assumption, but it's still an assumption as well, so.
And I take it, that when you show us a plan like this, you know that when they back out of that garage, they can back out of that garage. I mean, you check all those, I don't know if there's a term for that y'all have, but I don't know what that is, but the radius, the turning radius.
And I think if they're cool with each other, they'll probably be able to sell that parking space to someone else if they've, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We'll rent it out for the weekend. But we'll go ahead, if working with Amelia on this, the planning staff, we can add a few more spaces, and we'll verify. Again, I don't have that calculated. I think we're I think we're pretty good on formal open space. And Kathy, what you're bringing out is that you see formal open space is usable for the whole development. So that's really you're bringing that to the definition, and I appreciate that.
So one last comment from me, at least on this, so it behooved me to just say this. So this project is a very nice project in my personal opinion, but I have to ask from the standpoint of diversity of style, it's very different in the area. So can you comment on that?
Well, we wanted it to be different. We kind of we want the people that own the houses, which is mainly rentals down through there, to want to sell those eventually and maybe start conforming to what we're doing. And if that's not the case, so this gets rid of some houses that really need to be gone. And even if the people want to tear down the house next to them and build a nicer home like some of the ones on 1st and 2nd Streets got, it makes them more comfortable to spend $300,000 or $500,000 on a home over there versus, and that's how I look at it. I don't know if that's the economics of how I look at it. I tried to make this project. I know affordable living is a hot topic right now. That's the reason I put the 2 bedrooms, and we could have done 3 or 4 garage units there, but then you have price points that's over 3. We thought this would give a price point of 240s. And still give somebody an affordable option to live somewhere nice. The houses we're tearing down, there's no reason a person should ever have to live in accommodations like that. They're horrible. So that was our thought process. As far as the looks, we wanted to try something different. We just thought it would look good in downtown. I've seen it mix into Nashville, and I've always been impressed with the way they've done some of their stuff. Some of the stuff I don't like down there, but.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think what we'll see as there's more infill, I think the idea of the rooftop is really, I think that's why they're doing so much in Nashville, because that really does provide kind of a quality space in an urban environment that's private. So it hints that geometry, that more, vertical contemporary look with an open roof versus something with a pitched roof. I could just see it going in that direction because that's pretty prime space. It's good real estate space too from a sale value. But I think as you were introducing urban living in areas that are in transition, I think it's nice to know you can go outside and there's no issue with, kind of a safety thing or, that kind of situation. So I feel like you're probably going to see more of it, I guess, because it's just prime spot up top, if that makes sense.
I have another question that I don't know if it's more for staff. Ms. Kerr, if there was the 6 inches, that's a deviation from the floor elevation. Explain to me, are we good with what they're asking for here, or would we rather see something different, or we have a certain guideline and we're doing something different?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm kind of lost on that part.
We requested the 18 inches, and they didn't feel that that was something that was needed on this proposal. That's why they asked for it to just be the 6 inches. So staff kind of weighed the differences between a product that we would be getting and whether that 12 inches was going to make a big difference. The thing about having the 18 inches, it sets it up a little bit higher, so when you've got somebody walking in a sidewalk right in front of your home that has windows right there, they're not looking directly into your home. It's elevated somewhat, so that's why it's in the RSA Type 3 guidelines as one of the things that is desired for that type of home.
That's what I needed to know, and so then Mr. Burns or Mr. Roundtree can respond, if you don't mind, and explain why it is that the 18 inches was not something you felt like you could do.
And it gives you, when you do the 18 inches, you got to build 3 steps. We're only 8 foot off the property line, so you have 3 steps protruding out in front of each home, in front of the sidewalk. I'd like to fix it where we got 1 step, at where you got a sidewalk goes in, you got 1 step up, you're going in, which gives you more landscape space, gives you, I think it just gives a better look for the row look. If we were building single-family homes, I 100% agree. And 18, 24 inches usually, but on this row look, I think it looks better when you don't have a bunch of steps coming out of them.
And so these are going to have just a little sidewalk, and then you're 1 step up, you're in the front door. There is no like front porch or anything.
No,
like
it's
that.
going to be like an industrial-looking awning with big industrial-looking lights on the side. It's very. And I don't know if industrial is the word. It's urban, I guess, is probably a better word. I seen a picture of one that was built in London, England. That's where I got my inspiration, I guess, from it. So,
Okay.
but that's the reason for we would like to have the deviation on the height.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Jones, we would like to ask for clarification, if we could, on the open space. The open space is, of course, got to be 20% of the entire project. And generally, you can get that when you have normal setbacks around the perimeter of the properties. They calculate the open spaces on the project, so I'm just trying to find out if it was an exception for less open space or less formal open space with the parking spots. Would you prefer that be an exception? Do you want to try to fit within the open space requirement and the formal open space requirement?
I really think they need to see what they can do to try to meet the formal open space requirement and get us our parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
That's just my personal opinion. So the other people can, the rest of this commission can state, because it may not be possible, except that I know it's possible. Except that, yeah.
I agree.
Did you have something
I
else
do
for us, Ms.
not. I was
Kerr?
just making
Okay.
sure nobody had
Any other questions and concerns from the Planning Commission before we set a public hearing?
Well, my only question is, do we want to see what this looks like? And I don't know what your timeline is, but do we want to see, we all come to an agreement as to what this final look is before we go to a public hearing? I'm just asking the question.
I was wondering the same thing. I don't think that's what me and Clyde was talking about. I think our only options is to add the parking spots down there where we're talking and then take the island out, and then might be able to squeeze one more up there, but I don't know what that does to the calculations of the former open space then. So
Yeah, I think
we gotta get
to a
those.
public hearing, let's figure out where we can all come to an agreement before we go to a public hearing. Unless you've got some standing, something that's burning in your pocket that you gotta, get this rolling. I mean.
Well, it's always burning in my pocket to get it rolling, so, but I mean, that's not I want to get it right too, so.
Okay.
How about this? How about if we can't come up with the parking spaces of, I guess, 2.5, or the 4 extra parking spaces with here and here and that island, and if we can't get the space we need with the former open space, I'll delete one of the 2-bedroom units. And if, that way it keeps us from having to come back, and if you guys are okay with trusting us on that, we'll.
I think that's the
That's fine.
best we could possibly hope for, because I do think that is the long-term potential option if we can't, if it can't work. I mean, that's just what's going to have to happen.
Well, and I want the
One
unit, but I don't want it to be, when you drive down, there's a crowd of cars everywhere either. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So, we'll make it work, and, that's really the only 2 options we got, so.
Ms. Jones and members of the Planning Commission,
Yes,
I think
sir.
you have a few different options. You can either schedule it for the February 3rd public hearing and allow us to continue to work with Mr. Roundtree and Mr. Burns between now and when the agenda is published next week or by next Friday. Or you could schedule it for the early March public hearing date, and we could bring you a staff report at the February 17th meeting. So you could go ahead and schedule it for March the 3rd, and then we could bring you a staff report at the February 17th meeting. Or you could go ahead, as I mentioned, and schedule it for the February 3rd meeting. And you're well within your time frame to do either.
I think we can.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with February 3rd, because I feel like you're going to work it out one way or the
I'm gonna
other.
work it out one way or the other. I'd like to keep it on February 3rd if that works for your guys' schedules.
Make a motion for a public hearing on February the 3rd.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jacob? Sorry. You didn't know we were going to just go ahead and decide to do that.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes for a public hearing on February 3rd. Appreciate that, and appreciate y'all working with us on all of that.
Yeah.
Like getting as much done as we can at this meeting. I like that a lot. That concludes our new business. We have staff reports and other business, and Margaret Ann has raised her hand back here. I believe she's got some other business.
I do, right?
Oh, I didn't know you had the other business they were talking about. No, we don't have that.
Okay, during the meeting, you told me I did, okay.
Okay, all right. So I don't think we have any other business. Mr. Blomley, Mr. McKnight, Mr. Huddleston? No, we're good. Anybody else have any other staff reports or other business? And if not, we stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.